I have right here an example of igneous rock. This is from up on Carpenter Peak, which is the west and the highest point in the park. And the way you recognize an igneous rock is usually it's got a lot of crystals in it. This happens to be granite or a mixture of granite and gneiss. And if you look at it close, you'll see that there are big chunks, big crystals in there as opposed to pebbles. So this is made up of crystals instead of little pebbles. Do you know, Ian, where igneous rock comes from?
From volcanoes.
Volcanoes do produce igneous rocks. Basically, the idea of an igneous rock is that at some point it was molten. It was magma, meaning it was liquid. If you can imagine this rock being liquid and being able to move around. What happened with this Carpenter Peak granite is that at one time it was underneath the surface of the earth and it was molten magma, and it had a chance to cool, actually kind of slowly, and you can tell by the size of the crystals that are in the rock, it cooled very slowly. And so it was allowed to cool from a molten state underneath the surface of the earth. So not exactly the same as a volcano, but igneous rock all the same.
What is the last type of rock?
Our last type is the metamorphic rock. And metamorphic rock is a type of rock that you can find also up on the edges of Carpenter Peak. And do you know where metamorphic rocks come from, Ian?
Sounds like something that changes, but I'm not sure.
That's absolutely right. The answer is in the name. Metamorphic rocks are actually rocks that have changed or undergone some type of metamorphosis. In the case of gneiss rocks, they start out as another type of rock, and then as nature moves them and they heat, they transform into gneiss. And gneiss is easy to recognize because it has banding in it. This dark and light banding is one of the ways you can recognize gneiss.
Why are the rock formations slanted?
I think there's a better place to answer that than right here. So what we'll do is we'll head down the trail a little bit to the Fountain Valley Overlook, and we'll talk about why the rock formations are slanted there, okay?
Okay.
Let's go.
Nice view!
Yeah, the view here is great. That's why I was thinking this would be a good place for you and I to talk about your question that you had a couple minutes ago, which was, why are the rock formations at Roxborough at an angle? And if you take a look out here and see all these rock formations sticking up, now I need you to use your imagination to figure out how they got that way. Let's go back in time again, and we'll think about how these rocks were deposited, which was in layers that are flat on top of each other. So I've got a couple layers here. Do you want to add a couple layers? So we had all these layers that were laying flat, and then about 68 million years ago, there was a nice solid piece of granite, just like we looked at when we were talking about igneous rocks, that started to push up on all those layers. And as it pushed up on them, it bent them. So the layers were bent and exposed to sun and wind and rain and lightning. And do you remember what happens when you do that to a rock?
It erodes.
Absolutely. So they started to erode away, exposing that nice solid fist and leaving these little fingers of rocks sticking up at the edge of the fist. If you look around you, do you see fingers of rocks sticking up anywhere?
Yeah.
Do you see the fist sticking up?
Yeah.
You got it. So that's how they ended up being angled. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Are there any fossils in Roxborough?
There's fossils of both animals and plants that we found in various places. One of the ones I want to show you is this one right here. And right here in the rock, you can see evidence of a clam. What in the world is a clam doing at Roxborough State Park?
Wasn't it under an ocean at one time?
Absolutely right, yeah. This actually is evidence of an ancient seaway called the Cretaceous Seaway that used to be here at Roxborough State Park. It was a shallow area. We found clams. We've also found shark teeth in the rocks that let us know that those animals were living here. I have another great fossil to show you, and it's the white rocks that you can see real easily as you're driving along the road, the bright white ones. And if you look at here and you see these lines in this rock, it's evidence of a creature called a stromatolite. And it's actually a blue-green algae that lived in big mats, and every day it would get covered with sand, and every time it got covered with sand, it would grow back over the sand and get covered with sand. So basically all you see are these lines that tell you that there were these big piles of algae that lived out like big veggie burgers in a very shallow, salty sea.
Thank you, Mary. If you want any more information about Roxborough State Park, call 303-973-3959 or visit our website at www.coloradoparks.org.